Hello everyone and welcome to 1-3. Okay, this is going to be all about taking words and turning them into mathematical statements, okay, using those mathematical symbols that we know. So we're going to start off these warm-up problems, just be real quick reminders of what this looks like, and then we'll get right into the problems. So if we want 5 more than a number, remember, when it just says a number, right, we can't write one down. We just have to use, right, that arbitrary but specific value, and for that we always use a letter. So normally in math you see a lot of X's, a lot of N's, but you can use lots of numbers. So it doesn't really matter. Let's just use an N this time. So we'll have N plus 5, right? Because if it's 5 more than a number, then we're adding 5 to that number. 1 less than twice a number. Well, 1 less means we're taking 1 away, so we're going to put minus 1 at the end. And then twice a number, well, that would be 2 times, and then you just put your number in, whether you're using N or X, whatever variable you like is totally fine. 7 more than half of a number, so 7 more would be plus 7 than half of a number, so 1/2 times a number. Of course, order of operations would tell us we have to do this multiplication before we can add that in. Then 2 more than the square of a number. So the square of a number is where you take a number, let's use X this time, and square it. Okay, but then it has to be 2 more than that, so we get plus 2. Now, math, you have to be careful when you're reading these because one little word can really drastically change what something means. So here we have 8 less than a number. So if you have 8 less than a number, again, we just pick any variable we want and we subtract 8 from it. But if we say 8 is less than a number, then all of a sudden we're talking about an inequality. So we have to make sure that we're carefully paying attention to what the problem's telling us. Now this next little group here, okay, this is kind of a fun group. The first 3 lead into the second 3. So it says list 3 consecutive integers starting with 4. So remember, integers are your counting numbers, 0, and their opposites. So the counting number and their opposites plus 0. So if we're starting at 4 and we want to get the 3 consecutive integers, that would give us 4, 5, and 6. Okay, it says the odd integers, so consecutive odd integers starting with 7. So to get to the next odd integer, right, we have to go to 9, and then we have to go to 11. For even integers, okay, 6, 8, 10. Notice how, right, to go from 7 to 9, we add 2. To go from 9 to 11, we add 2. Right, because we're trying to stay with the odd. Same thing with the even. If you start with an even and you're adding 2 each time, right, 2 or 6 plus 2 is 8 plus 2 is 10, right, so we're just adding 2 each time. So now if we just want to list any 3 consecutive integers, right, it says list 3, we just have to start with x, okay, or whatever variable you'd like, and then we want to go for the next 3. So the next one would be 1 more than it, and then the one after that would be another 1 more, so 1 plus 1 gives us 2 more. So we use that same idea when we're talking about odd integers. So we're going to start with x, but now x has to be odd because that's the condition that we have. And as we talked about, to get to the next odd integer, we're always adding 2. So it's going to be x plus 2, and if we want to get to the one after that, we have to add 2 more. Well, we already added 2, so if we add 2 more, that gets us to 4. So that's going to be x plus 4. Same exact thing is true with even integers. Okay, we're at x, x plus 2, and x plus 4. And as we looked at before, right, 7 plus 2 is 9, plus 2 is 11, 6 plus 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. So we're adding 2 whether it's odd or even. The key is it's what you start with. So that first one has to be an odd number when we're talking about odd integers, or it has to be an even number when we have the even integers, and then it just keeps you either in odd or even. Okay, a regular rectangular garden is L feet long and is enclosed by 200 feet of fencing. What is the width of the garden? So normally we would say that our length is going to be larger than our width. So that's why I drew it this way. So length, length, width, width, right? This has to be enclosed by 200 feet. So L plus W plus L plus W has to equal 200. So now I'm going to combine like terms. So L and L gives me 2L. W and W is 2W, and then that equals 200. I now am trying to solve for W, right, because I want to know how wide the garden is, so I need to subtract 2L from both sides. So 2W equals 200 minus 2L. Well, we need to get this W by itself. So to do that, we have to divide everything by 2. So those cancel each other out. We're left with W, right? 200 divided by 2 gives us 100. So that's 100 minus, those 2's cancel each other out. We're just left with L. So we have that our width is 100 minus our length. Okay, this next one, the perimeter of an isosceles triangle is 500 centimeters. Well, what do we know about an isosceles triangle? Right, an isosceles triangle has to have 2 congruent legs, and then it has a base. Okay, so it tells us that the perimeter is 500 if the legs are L centimeters long. How long is the base? So L plus B has to equal 500. So 2L plus B equals 500 because L plus L gives us 2L. But now it asks us to solve for the base. So we need to get this B by itself. And to do that, we're going to subtract 2L from both sides. So my base equals 500 minus 2L. And we've solved for B, so there's no further to go. On to my next one here. It says Patrick's father is F years old. Patrick's age is 3 years less than half of his father's. What is their difference in ages? Well, that means we need to figure both of them out first. So we have Patrick and we have his father, right? It tells us his father is F years old. And then it says Patrick is 3 years less than half of his father. So he is half of his father minus 3, right? Because 3 years less minus 3, half of his father. So it wants to know what the difference in their ages. And difference implies that we're going to be subtracting. Now, right, in all realms of reality, Patrick's father should be older than him. So then we need to start off with F and subtract from it Patrick's age, which is 1/2 F minus 3. We now need to distribute this negative, so F minus 1/2 F minus a negative becomes plus a positive, so that's plus 3. So if we have a whole F, we subtract half of one, that means we're left with 1/2 of an F plus 3. So that is the difference in their ages. Okay, if we flip over, it says Ashley has S songs on her iPod. If she had 100 more, she would have half as many as her sister. So it says she has S songs, and she'd have half as many as her sister. So how many does her sister have? Well, Ashley's sister, okay, which we're just going to call X, right? You take what Ashley has, S, and it says if she had 100 more, she would have half as many. So if you add 100 to that, that has to equal half as many as what her sister has. So if we take half of X, that has to equal S plus 100. So half of X, there's nothing to simplify down yet, but we do want to get rid of this 1/2, right? So that means we need to multiply both sides by 2. So X equals 2S plus 200. So that's how many songs downloaded on the iPad that her sister has. Okay, up next says the length and width of a rectangle are consecutive even integers. So those are some important things. Consecutive even integers, and its length is L. Okay, so as we talked about previously, right, the length is normally longer than the width. So this is the length and this is the width, right? If this is L, right, then this side would have to be, it needs to be a consecutive integer. But remember, the width should be less. So instead of adding 2, we're going to subtract 2. So then it says find the area. Well, that would be L times L minus 2. So with this one, okay, sometimes, you're like, if you left it in this form, that would be totally fine. But if you multiply that out and wrote it as L squared minus 2L, I would also accept that. So either one of those answers I would actually accept. So it's up to you on which way you like it better. Okay, so now when we look for the perimeter, right, our perimeter is 2 times the base times the height, or you could just say is L plus L minus 2 plus L plus L minus 2. So when we go through these, we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 L's that we're adding together, and then we have minus 2, which would be minus 4. So your perimeter is 4L minus 4. Okay, the next one, 2 buses leave the depot at the same time. One heads east at X miles an hour and the other heads west at half that speed. After 4 hours, how far apart are the buses? So when we're talking about speed, right, distance equals rate times time. Right, so our distance that we're looking for, right, how far apart are they, has to equal their rate, which we have to think about this, right? We have one bus that's heading X miles an hour in one direction. The other bus is heading half that speed, so 1/2 X miles an hour in the other direction. So when we're looking at the rate, we have to add those two together because that's really how far apart they're going. So my distance has to equal 1/2 X plus X and then times my time. So how long was it? Well, it was 4 hours. So my distance equals, well, if you have 1/2 plus 1, that gives me 1/2. So 1 and 1/2 X times 4. This could also be written out as 3/2 X times 4. So then if we multiply that out, 1/2 times 4 or 3/2 times 4, you get the same answer either way. Your distance equals 6X. Okay. A family is driving to their vacation destination, is traveled for 3 hours at R miles per hour. Then it decreased that speed by 15 miles for 2 hours. How far have they traveled? Well, so we have a couple of different chunks we're looking at. So they traveled R miles an hour for 3 hours. So their rate, right, was the rate for the first part was R miles an hour for 3 hours. So that's just 3R. Okay, but we have two different circumstances because then they decreased their speed by 15 miles an hour. So then for a while they took whatever their previous rate was, they subtract 15 from that, and then they did that for another 2 hours. So if we want to know the total distance traveled, we would have to add those two together to find what my distance equals. So that's 3R plus, we have to distribute the 2. So this is 2R minus 30. So 3R plus 2R is 5R minus 30. So distance equals 5R minus 30. And the last one on here says 2 angles in a pentagon have a measure of 3x. What is the average of the measure of the other 3 angles? Now, this is going to pull into account some stuff that we've done that you've done in the past, okay, including things like average. So let's kind of just work our way through this, right? So if we have a pentagon, right, and it says that 2 of the angles are 3x. So this is 3x, and let's say this is 3x. if our total amount is 540, and we subtract these two angles, okay, from that, then that gives us what we have left. So 540 minus 6x tells us how much we have left for the remaining 1, 2, 3 angles. So if we want to know what the average of those 3 angles are, then we would have to divide it by 3. So I could break that down into 540 divided by 3 minus 6x divided by 3. 540 divided by 3 is 180. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So that would give me 180 minus 2x. Thank you so much for watching this video, and get to work on your homework.